Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Kelli Jo Welter is a final year pharmacy student at Drake University and currently serves as the APhA-ASP National President. She helps pharmacy students grow personally and professionally by providing insights on successful careers. Kelli Jo looks forward to pursuing residency training after graduation, hoping to become a pediatric ambulatory care pharmacist. So welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, tell me a little bit. It's been a little while since we talked. We did a two-part series talking about your election to the position. So it's been quite a while, but maybe fill us in on what's going on with residency with you and kind of how you came to pediatric ambulatory care pharmacist. I just found out one of my friends who is a Drake grad actually does that. I was like, oh, he does? That's cool. All right. But how'd you get there?
I am born and raised in Eastern Iowa, and Drake was really appealing to me because it offered me a ton of opportunities as far as exploring different types of pharmacy and being able to spend some time in Iowa, in Des Moines, with some really amazing pharmacy thought leaders. I felt super welcomed when I first came to campus, and I think it was a really good fit for me. So as I've gone through my pharmacy career, I've constantly reflected on why did I decide to go into pharmacy? And I think regardless of wherever you're at in your pharmacy journey or any career, that you should constantly be asking yourself what your purpose is and what your why is. And when I come back to it, pediatrics and the opportunity to work with kids was one of the initial reasons that I wanted to be in healthcare. I remember going to the doctor with my mom and even my siblings and helping her out with that, and actually not hating going to the doctor because we felt so welcomed by all of the healthcare professionals there. So when I started to look into pharmacy careers a few years down the road, and most recently, of course, in the past year or so, I kept coming back to, I want to work with kids. I want to help kids. I was a dance camp instructor for 4 years, and I really liked being able to watch kids grow and really be part of their journey. So I was thinking about how can I then take this concept and this desire of wanting to work with kids and use my communication and my leadership and my relationship building skills and apply it to healthcare. And I stumbled upon this idea of pediatric ambulatory care pharmacy in some literature and some different individuals that I've talked to at meetings. And the more I learned about it and the more I explored about it, I got really excited. So pediatric ambulatory care pharmacists can work in a variety of different settings, from an endocrinology clinic where we're helping pediatric patients manage their type 1 diabetes. Most recently, I had a psychiatric outpatient rotation, and we actually had a group therapy where we worked with kids to help them understand their medications and speak with them about adherence and compliance and why that's so important. Even places like transplant and other types of chronic diseases like asthma or cystic fibrosis. I think there's a really incredible space for pharmacists to play a role in that.
Okay, well, actually, let's hear a little bit about the clinical, maybe pediatric things. With 3 8-year-old girls, 2 have asthma. They were in the NICU for, so 55 days hospital bed rest, then the NICU for 3 months. So we really had quite a bit of help from the pharmacist and the healthcare team at Mercy. But where did you end up going for your rotations to support you with this role?
I currently am on rotation right now at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. I'm so lucky that I have this opportunity, and I actually get to do a pediatric rotation here next rotation. So I'm really excited for that. As of right now, I haven't had a specific pediatrics rotation, but with my other experience, with my teaching, with some touch points here and there in my other rotations and some different job shadows during rotations that I've sought out, I'm really excited to keep learning more about how I can help kiddos.
I've heard about the Mayo Internship over the summer and that it's really interprofessional there. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you guys work together so well?
A typical day in the life of a rotation here at Mayo is getting to the hospital early and working up my patients, spend a couple hours every morning, and then I meet with my preceptors so we can talk about interventions that we can provide to the team. And we work very closely with residents and an attending physician. And there's a really great team dynamic that everybody is on the same playing field, which I really appreciate, making sure that we're all on the same page with what we think is the best for the patient. And then we all go into the patient room after we've spoken as a team, and we speak with the patient about what their goals of care are and what we think would be some recommendations for them. And it's a really, really great atmosphere as far as one of the staple principles here is that the patient is the most important person in the room. And I think that really sets the framework for always looking to giving the patient what they need. And I think when everyone gathers around what we need to be doing for the patient, that gives them the absolute best care that we can give them.
Definitely. Well, let's talk a little bit about leadership. And I know that you're president of APhA-ASP or were, and I wanted to hear a little bit more about how that team framework works in. I think that there's a mistaken thought that, and I talked to Drake Reeder about this, that, okay, the president sets the goals and then everybody follows the president, but it's actually working with the executive team. So can you tell us maybe a little bit about the executive team and then how you learned from those in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my role as APhA-ASP National President, I have the privilege of working with so many different types of teams within the organization. We have our National Executive Committee, which is 5 people, including myself. Then we also have our 5 national standing committees. We have 24 regional officers. We have 140 chapter presidents across the country. And then I also serve as the student pharmacist voice on the APhA Board of Trustees. And I think what's so important in these meetings that I have learned over the past 2 years is that when you're speaking for others in any leadership role, it's always so important to think about why you've been elected or why you've been appointed to the role to represent the people that you serve. And I say that because it is you physically sitting at the table or you physically speaking, but it's really that you're speaking on behalf of others. I think that can also translate into us speaking on behalf of our patients and really being an advocate for them and their healthcare journey. So what I have learned over the past 2 years is that it is so important to be assertive and to stand your ground for your constituents, but it's also just as important to keep an open mind and to welcome other opinions and have that flexibility and that openness to be able to take in those thoughts and gather them and see who's at the table and what voices we have at the table. Take all of that information, gather it together, evaluate it, and then use that to move forward. And I think what makes a great leader in the individuals that I've been able to interact with, both pharmacist leaders and individuals at the board, is that they've been able to find that balance between assertiveness and standing your ground and also being open and being welcoming to these other opinions and using that to guide their decisions and guide their leadership experience and speak for others.
Okay, well, the one thing I wanted to make sure we talked about before we got to research as another component that residents need is to talk about the importance of the meeting. So obviously so much attention on mid-year for residency and talking with the showcase participants and things like that. But when we come down to the applications, it's APhA president or APhA or ASP president or ASP vice president or some other role that they have. So it seems that these roles have worked really well together and that those are 2 must-go-to meetings rather than just the one. Can you talk a little bit about how important going to APhA in March, going to Washington, D.C., and really getting to see what things are on the national level? I know you've been there a long time, but maybe go back to when you first did it.
I think the thing to think about with meetings is that when you think about attending pharmacy meetings, it's not about just going to one or just going to 2. It's a continuity of putting yourself out there, of getting to know people, learning about different types of pharmacy careers, and going to meetings is really how you build your network. When I first went to my first APhA annual meeting, which was in Nashville 2 years ago, it was actually the meeting that I was running for national office. And I remember thinking to myself about halfway through the weekend, if I'm not elected to this position, I can say that I had the best time of my life. I went to actually some of the sessions that pharmacists went to for their CE, because those sessions are free for student pharmacists. It's included in your registration. And I remember getting to sit next to two pharmacists in two vastly different practice settings, one on my left, one on my right. And they were so excited to talk to me about what they were doing in their practice setting and how that CE course that we were sitting in was applying to their practice. And then afterwards, of course, we did the classic business card swap. And then that was one step in building my career. Now, that also doesn't even mention yet that I got to meet how many hundreds of student pharmacists at this meeting. And I think sometimes we forget as students that, yes, we're all in school now, but in just a few years, we are all going to be pharmacists and we're all going to be practicing. So building your network and starting that relationship building now at meetings like the APhA annual meeting and exposition, where we're gathering students and pharmacists from all practice settings all across the country, that's really how you set yourself up for success now as a student and then post-graduation.
Yeah, I love that they physically put Phi Delta Chi next to Kappa Psi, next to, the other ones. And they are literally all there together. And it's kind of cool to see the presidents of all those organizations in one place, all coming together. And they get to talk during the showcase or what they had there. So, well, let's go on to research. And how do you fit in research, or what kind of research questions were you most interested in maybe answering now as a student or maybe as a resident?
When I came into Drake, I had some college credits. So I completed most of my pre-pharmacy coursework in that first year and a half of the program. So just a little background, Drake is a 2+4 program. So I was a pre-pharmacy student. And I went to my advisor, Dr. Erin Ulrich, and she was so supportive of me exploring different options with what to do with some of that time that I had after completing college credits. And she sat down with me and came up with a very thoughtful, intentional plan about seeking out different research opportunities at Drake. So the way that we looked into it, and I thought it was really easy to navigate, is on each professor's profile on Drake's website, they list what type of research they're doing, and then if they're looking for students. So that for me was a really quick touch point to see, okay, what's this professor interested in? Am I interested in that? And how could I help them? And how could I grow as a student pharmacist? So Dr. Ulrich worked me through this process, and I actually went and met with a few different professors to learn more about their projects. And I eventually ended up working with Dr. Ulrich and Dr. Frank Caligiuri on medical cannabis education for pharmacy students. And that was a 2-year-long project from, it was the actual conceptualization of the project through data collection, through analysis. And then I was actually published by my P2 year, which was a really great experience. So much so that Dr. Ulrich brought me on to a second project regarding financial incentives for student pharmacists to practice in medically underserved areas after graduation.
And then I've read that. I mean, not you telling me to read it, but I've read that and found that I want to say it was like $15,000 or $20,000 more that they would need to go into a rural area.
Yeah, it was really fascinating research to be a part of because it was so different than what I had done with Dr. Caligiuri and Dr. Ulrich previously. So I felt like there were two very great experiences to learn about what it's like to start something from the beginning, that conceptualization and working through the process, all the way through what it's like to review and edit and submit a manuscript for publication. So I felt like I had such great support from Dr. Ulrich and, of course, Dr. Caligiuri, and John Hurdlebrink was another individual who worked for that second project. So it was a great experience, and I felt really supported the whole way through.
Tell me a little bit about teaching and how you fit that in and what kind of teaching you've done. My daughters have been in gymnastics since they were 3, and I'm expecting that if you ever to ask you when you started gymnastics, it would be at a pretty young age. But those people that are teaching them are so influential in their confidence and all of those things. And they're only 8, but you can see how different it is to grow up with something that's really a part of you. So how have you shared your experiences with other students?
In everything that I've done, I want to make people feel like they matter and that they are important and that they're valued. And I think where I've tried to translate that is into mentoring some younger student pharmacists at Drake and then at other schools and colleges of pharmacy as well. And I think sometimes the best mentors are the ones who are there to listen and to provide encouragement. Because I know that when I was a younger student pharmacist, I was looking for someone to listen and someone to help me on my path. And that came into experiences with my advisors. One of my greatest mentors, Dr. Stelter, was so helpful. And then individuals like Annie Stella and Elizabeth Bald, I could go on and
Sure.
name off people that have helped me. But I think the culture at Drake with mentoring younger students and really establishing yourself in pharmacy organizations to build up that next generation of leaders has been so apparent. I've had friends who have been mentors in classes for younger students, and I know they've really enjoyed that as well.
Maybe that kind of ties into service, but in terms of service, how did you round out your, I don't want to say CV because everything you do just comes from your just passion for helping others, but what kind of service opportunities did you end up with at Drake?
Aside from pharmacy, I felt really encouraged to pursue opportunities for service, both in pharmacy, of course, and then outside of my major. And I see that across all majors at Drake. So I got involved early on with Love Your Melon, which is an organization that supports pediatric cancer research. Okay. And it kind of fed my excitement to be able to work with kids and visit them at hospitals. And then I was also a Blank Children's Hospital volunteer for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And that wasn't in the pharmacy department. I was actually a movie cart volunteer. So I scooted down the halls with my cart of DVDs and I knocked on each and every door every Wednesday morning for 5 years. And I said, "Hi, I'm Kelli Jo. I'm a movie cart volunteer. Can I get you any movies today?" And most of the time, the kids were really, really excited to see someone in a blue volunteer jacket because it meant I wasn't coming at them with a needle or any kind of medication they had to take. But I think what I learned from that is that in anything that I do, whether it's pharmacy or not, to really make the most of those experiences, even getting involved in my church and being a lector and helping with the finals breakfast every Monday night. That was so much fun. And then I was on the Drake dance team for 4 years as well. And I learned a lot from that discipline and self-motivation. And honestly, cheering at the games, really being a face for my organization, that taught me a lot as well, as far as professionalism goes too.
You've served at APhA-ASP at the highest level, and I know there's others that would like to win that election or become involved at that level, but you don't go, okay, I did vice president, then president, then I become president. There just aren't enough years in pharmacy school. I know Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor. He kind of skipped any other positions in political office, so he just went right to governor. What is the different path that you take when you're going for that national position?
I will say that this was never part of my grand plan for pharmacy school. And I will say too that I currently serve as the national president. I don't know if I can claim it as the highest title because I think we're all working together so hard with all the different teams that I mentioned to really push forward the academy. But I think one piece of advice that I would hope that anybody who is running for national office, whether it's in APhA-ASP or elsewhere, would consider is that it's so important to keep your why close to you. I think having good intentions for what you want to do in the position is absolutely imperative to give the organization what it needs and have a great time. Because if you're having a great time in your leadership experience, that's going to emulate to the people that you're serving. Like I said, in everything that I do, I want to make people feel like they matter and that they're valued. And I've translated that into some different initiatives that we've done with my team this year. So we've helped to facilitate communication through different vice presidents across the country with webinar series twice this year to really give people a voice. And we've revamped our video competition. It's called PharmFlix, and it's student pharmacists advocating through patient care. So reminding student pharmacists that everything that they do matters and every interaction that they have matters. And then finally, my national theme of fearlessly authentic, encouraging student pharmacists that in everything that they do to bring their full selves to their team, to their organization, to every day in the classroom, even when it can feel mundane and like we're checking off boxes, to really put yourself out there, to be fully yourself. Because I think being authentic in everything that you do is one way that we can really give our best selves for our profession and for our patients. So just keeping that why close to you and keeping those values and then using that to drive everything that you do.
Yeah, I remember working with a couple of students that were working with their letters of intent, and they had written letters that they thought that the preceptors wanted to see. And then we just took some time, and after a while, they came to the conclusion that what they want to see is who you are and why you're different. They don't want to see why you're someone that they hope you'll be. That tends to be a real turning point when they finally get that reflection. But tell me a little bit about how you now take this very national role, and now you're going to be one-on-one with the child or a child, and you're going to be there with the parents. How do you just focus laser in on that when you've had such a broad scope?
That's something that I've been reflecting on over the past few months as I prepare my letters of intent and my applications and get very excited to go on interviews soon. And I think what I come back to is in helping people feel valued and feel like they matter, I want to give them an incredible experience. So I've been so fortunate to meet so many people from around the country, and I want to give them that experience by encouraging them and inspiring them to be their best. I want to take that into my patients. I want to be an advocate for them like I've been an advocate for 30,000 people at the APhA Board of Trustees table. I want to take my experience into my residence training and use one-on-one interactions with patients to create a plan for them, to be an advocate for them in their healthcare journey. Looking at my experience, how we've seen a long-term goal with my team and then broken it down into those smaller steps, I see that translating into working with a patient to see what their healthcare goals are and how we can work together and how I can provide tools and resources to them to help them achieve their goals. And I'd say one of the last major ways that I'll use my experience is the fact that peds AmCare is a growing field for pharmacy. I'll need to apply that concept of being a visionary and bring others along that are excited and want to work together so we can build up the practice area. That's not to mention the time management skills, the self-motivation, and the discipline that I definitely have improved upon over these past few years that I think will apply very nicely to my hopeful future as a resident.
We had a real scare with one of our girls, and she had asthma, and she didn't respond to prednisolone, so they were concerned about CF. And when they did the test and when we waited for the results of that test, we could have cared less about any of the pharmacotherapy. All we cared about was the compassion and care that they had. And those are the kinds of things that you made clear, that making them the most important person, because at that moment we were just absolutely petrified, and it worked out, that she didn't have it. But absolutely, that's a phenomenal opportunity for pharmacists to get into. Well, I have asked you so many questions. Is there any last words that maybe you have of encouragement, of advice? It is crazy time now with residency applications. And I even remember seeing on social a number of posts that are like, I just need moral support. I don't need advice. I just need some moral support.
I really appreciate all your thoughtful questions. It's been such a pleasure. I would say the last piece of advice or, little moment that I'll leave with you and the student pharmacists that are hopefully listening is to practice gratitude in everything that you do. I think sometimes we get so bogged down with the day-to-day, the grind, the pushing on through, the powering through to the next exam, that we sometimes forget to look back and see how far we've come and look at the people who have helped us along the way. So our family, our friends, our professors, if you have a higher power that you look to for guidance, just practicing gratitude and giving yourself a moment, whether it's every night, whether it's once a week. Hopefully it's more than once a month, but I get it that sometimes it's hard to fit things in.
Sure.
But even things like sending notes, a quick text, just showing people that you're really grateful for their time and effort to help you grow. I know that I have been so fortunate to have so many mentors and really great friends along the way that I always wish I could do more to show them that I care. That would be something that I'd encourage students to do, is just practicing that gratitude as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, we had one little kind of tidbit for the future residency hopefuls to not only send the email thank you, but also to remember to say, I'm still interested. Because after you leave that interview, it's not just you wondering, okay, do they like me? They're also like, well, did she like us? So make sure you affirm your interest in that residency site, and of course, thank them. And that attitude of gratitude, I know that's absolutely taken you so far. Well, Kelli Jo, I know you're so busy, and I appreciate you being here on, it's got to be a lot colder at the Mayo than it is here, but thank you so much for being on the Pharmacy Residency Podcast.
Thank you very much for your time, Tony. Always a pleasure.
Hey, and if you're interested in learning more about the residency interview process, go to residencyhelp.com or amazon.com or audible.com and pick out 100 strong residency interview questions, answers, and rationales.